Please welcome the director of Joe Frazier, When the Smoke Clears, Mike Tyler.
It was a great privilege to spend the time with Joe and the time they gave us to make this. It was filmed over nearly 18 months. Things didn't quite turn out as we initially planned when we started out on the project. It was very much about Joe and his gym and the young fighters. You see that Zeke, we were actually intending to follow him in the Golden Gloves. Actually, we were thinking he was going to win the Golden Gloves. That was what was predicted, and then he ended up obviously in prison. But that, to some extent, was a more realistic scenario in the neighbourhood where Joe's gym is. If you've ever been or know that area of North Philadelphia, it's a pretty tough situation there. And also then with Joe's gym closing, that was something that we never expected to happen. I don't think it was certainly not something that I know Marvis was desperate to try and keep it open for the work he did, something he really believes in. And that's something we wanted to show in the film from the outset, was kind of perhaps another side of Joe's character and his legacy that people perhaps know less than his obviously well-documented career in his rivalry. We show a little more about Joe as a human being. So that was our aim, what we set out to do. We came to Beaufort, and Richard was extremely helpful, and everyone we talked. It was a great kind of honour to be. We were only here actually, I think three days in total, but we just crammed as much as we could in that time. And I think we didn't expect actually the Beaufort elements of the film to form such a big part of it as they did, because we were just kind of wanting to give the context of where Joe came from, but the reality was it seemed such an important part of who he was and defining his character and kind of what inspired him to achieve what he did. I think a lot of people were really desperate to try and save the film, but Joe couldn't keep it running anymore. That was just unrealistic. I don't think Marvis could have really run it on his own. But I mean, I think there were perhaps authorities in Philadelphia or elsewhere, but more could have been done perhaps to perhaps raise money to keep it going, because it's such a, even as a landmark institution in Philadelphia, as purely on tourism grounds, I think it could have kept it going and perhaps supported the, you know, what Joe was doing there more.
I just wondered.
No, I believe I passed away
just a few weeks ago.
A few weeks ago. So.
Where did he live then?
Joe Frazier Road.
Joe Frazier Road.
Oh, maybe back here then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it ought to be in the Beaufort Film Festival next year.
Yeah.
Very good job.
And as we wind up, it's a great segue. We do have one person from the film in the audience, Tom Bolton. If you'll stand, please. We have a number of family members in the audience too. We have Jeanette Frazier, who is Joe's niece and daughter. And then we have their family members in the audience. Stand up.
I do have a brother and his wife.
Thank you. Thank you.
Legacy history, but actually the way archives management.
She's been at this virtually non-stop for 3.5 years before it had a mission or a sense of direction or even a name. She's always considered the Beaufort Three-Century Project a gift to the community, and it is that. Deborah Johnson also is a gift to the community. This is the last major event of the Beaufort Three-Century Project. So this is a good time to thank Deborah once again. Please join me.
Yeah, well, I was explaining this afternoon that when we started out researching this film, we were really looking at it from the perspective of a boxing gym. We were looking at kind of the impact that gyms like Joe's have on the communities they're in. And it was only during the research process that, you know, everyone knows that Joe Frazier had this gym in Philadelphia, but I didn't realise it was still kind of operating, it was still this kind of landmark institution. So when we decided we were going to make this film on a boxing gym, we thought, well, why not make it on what is probably the most famous boxing gym in the world, which is Joe Frazier's. And as we started to research more about the project, we were in touch with Joe and getting his and Marvis's agreement about doing the film. we sort of began to kind of look more at Joe's life and how that kind of intertwines with the meaning of the gym, and that's really how the story evolved. I mean, in so many ways, this film wasn't quite what we expected when we started out. I mean, first off, Isaiah, the young guy you see in the film, we were hoping to kind of follow his progress in the Golden Gloves. He was expected to be like a national champion, and when we started filming with him, it was to kind of follow his journey and the positive impact that being at the gym had on his life. Then he ends up in prison, which sadly is to some extent a more accurate reflection of the situation of where Joe's neighbourhood is and the problems a lot of people face. And then also, the biggest blow, we obviously never expected that the gym was to close during the process of the film, and it was such a landmark institution, this world famous place. And obviously you see in the film that Marvis particularly was desperate to keep it open and kind of give his life to supporting Joe and his work there, and a lot of people wanted to see it continue. So there were some disappointments, but what we set out to do with the film once we decided it was going to be on Joe and the gym was to really try and show the human side of Joe's character. We felt that everything that had been done on Joe or that Joe's involved with was always trapped within this frame of his rival with Muhammad Ali, which is clearly what makes him so famous. That rivalry with Muhammad Ali was the most famous probably rivalry in any sport, in any era. So you can't tell Joe's story without looking at that. But we wanted to show kind of Joe's experiences as a human being and where he came from, and why he was in some ways inspired to be what he became. And also,
what was Joe's age at the time?
Joe is, I think Joe's 66 now, something like, yeah, that's right. So he was kind of, when we started, he would have been 64, I think.
Plans to approach any of the individuals or states of the individuals who were part of those original shareholders that invested in him in the past, to say to them to invest in that gym and the other piece of property so that there is truly something monumental left in Philadelphia for him?
We'd hope that the film may open some doors to try and get some recognition for the gym, because even on a purely tourist level in Philadelphia, that gym is an iconic place that people want to go, and people from all over the world just turn up there to see it. And never mind the great work it did in the community, the social value it had, it was just a place that is so epic in terms of the scale of that era of boxing. When, I think I was talking to someone earlier, there are only a handful of people with the name recognition that Joe Frazier has around the world. To have a gym that he's run for 40 years in your city, people you would think would be falling over themselves to recognise that and do everything they can to save it, but sadly it just seems somehow it slipped through the cracks.
Where does the film go from here? What are your plans now?
So this is just a preview screen. This is the reason it's here was we had such a kind of a great time when we're in Beaufort, and I think the Beaufort part of the film is so important. I think more important than we expected when we came out. We just came out to kind of film where Joe was from and get some background and context, but the time we spent here, I think, almost changed. Quinnell and I were both out here, we were talking all the time we were here, and it kind of changed our perspective just about the way Joe was understood in different places, and I think there's a lot more Beaufort stuff in here than we originally anticipated to be in here. So Richard was obviously a great help, and Queen Claire, everyone who helped us when we filmed out here. And Richard had been in touch with me about putting this screen on. So this is just a preview screening in advance of the film's release next year. Next year is the 40th anniversary of the first Ali Frazier fight, the so-called fight of the century, which is still, I think, one of the most watched sporting events in history. I know there was a fact at the time more people watched that fight than watched the moon landings. So it was a massive phenomenon. Yes, at the back.
I'm curious about Mr. Frazier's place in history as a Sea Islander, and I'm kind of curious about what people from your part of the world, how you see the Sea Islands, what you expected before you came here, what you know, just this whole issue about identity.
Yeah, I learned a lot making the film. If you read a basic history about Joe Frazier, it says like he's the son of a sharecropper. He wasn't the son of a sharecropper, as his sister's keen to point out. They own the land, and I had never heard the word colour before I started researching this, and I read about Joe in more detail and more So I understood a little bit more before I came out, but obviously visiting here and understanding the complexities and the history connected to the Civil War and to this place and its particular significance. And it's yeah, I don't think many people in the UK, for example, know the importance of the Sea Islands. I'm from Manchester, which is a city that it kind of grew wealthy during the 1800s. Its era of great wealth was on the back of cotton. It was known as Cottonopolis. So the history of the city is tied to this area, really, in some ways, but people don't quite, I think, understand the culture and, you know, the significance of what went on here.
I have a mouthful of ham biscuit.
Gonna get an encore? I can't sing. Next thing you know, it's in the shower.